The crisis of the 3rd century was a tumultuous period for the Roman Empire, spanning from 235 to 284 AD. It represents a time when Rome faced severe political, military, and economic challenges, significantly impacting its stability and future trajectory. Defined by a rapid succession of emperors, widespread civil unrest, external invasions, and crippling economic instability, this period threatened the empire's very existence, highlighting the fragility of its imperial framework. The significance of setting the context for this crisis lies in understanding how these unprecedented challenges catalyzed essential changes within the empire. By grasping the underlying causes and effects of this chaos, we can better appreciate why Rome's eventual recovery and transformation into the late antique world were remarkable feats. These crises served as catalysts for foundational shifts, including administrative reforms and changes in military structures, which would set the stage for the Byzantine Empire. Two notable examples illustrate this era's turbulence. First, the constant turnover of emperors, nearly 50 rulers within a half-century, a phenomenon that underscores the political instability and power struggles endemic at the time. Many emperors came to power through military support, highlighting the role of the army as kingmakers and exacerbating internal divisions. Second, the empire faced relentless external pressures, notably the Gothic incursions and Persian aggressions, which strained Roman resources and exposed weaknesses in its frontier defenses. Support for the significance of this period comes from historians who argue that the crisis of the 3rd century was a defining moment in Roman history. It forced the empire to confront its systemic vulnerabilities and adapt, laying the groundwork for the later reforms of Diocletian and Constantine, which arguably saved the empire from total collapse. However, this period also invites debates and alternative viewpoints. Some scholars propose that the crisis wasn't as disastrous as traditionally portrayed, suggesting that the Roman world had a degree of resilience and adaptability that allowed it to endure. There's also discussion about whether the empire's problems were truly unprecedented or simply a continuation of earlier stresses. This crisis connects profoundly to other aspects of Roman history, acting as a pivot from the classical imperial structure to the more autocratic and bureaucratic system of the late empire. The reforms initiated in response would redefine Rome's governance and influence the socio-political landscape for centuries. Understanding the crisis contextually reveals how it was both a period of profound adversity and a turning point that reshaped Rome's destiny. The concept of the political instability and military anarchy during the crisis of the 3rd century refers to a period in Roman history characterized by widespread internal turmoil and fragmentation. This era, spanning roughly from 235 to 284 AD, saw rapid successions of emperors, often brought to power by military coups, and subsequently overthrown in the same manner. The lack of a stable central authority led to the Roman Empire being plagued by civil wars, external invasions, and pervasive economic decline. The significance of this period lies in its profound impact on the Roman Empire's stability and coherence. It highlighted how political instability and military interference in governance could lead to systemic collapse, threatening the very existence of what was once a powerfully centralized state. These events foreshadowed the eventual split of the Roman Empire into Eastern and Western entities, and they set a precedent for military dominance over civilian authority that would resonate in later periods of history. Two notable examples illustrate these points vividly. First, the reign of Emperor Maximinus Thrax, who came to power in 235 AD, marked the beginning of the crisis. Maximinus, a former soldier, ascended to the throne through a military revolt, illustrating the increasing reliance on military might rather than legitimate succession. His rule ignited a series of violent power struggles and rebellions across the empire. Second, the chaotic year of the six emperors, in 238 AD, during which six different claimants vied for the throne, underscores the endemic nature of military anarchy and the lack of political continuity. Supporters of the notion that the crisis of the 3rd century was primarily due to political instability and military anarchy argue that it underscores the dangers of militarizing politics and failing to establish strong, enduring institutions. However, some historians contend that these issues were symptoms rather than causes, pointing to underlying economic and social problems as the true catalysts. Controversially, some scholars question whether the term military anarchy sufficiently accounts for the period's complexities, suggesting alternative viewpoints that emphasize broader systemic challenges, such as economic failures and external pressures. This political and military chaos had pronounced effects on other aspects of the Roman Empire. It exacerbated economic difficulties as resources were diverted toward endless wars instead of public works or combating inflation. Furthermore, the instability weakened Rome's defenses against external threats, allowing barbarian groups to penetrate deeper into Roman territory, thus directly influencing the empire's territorial integrity and its long-term viability. These interconnected challenges demonstrate how political instability was both a driver and a consequence of the broader crisis, ultimately shaping the future of Roman governance and society. Economic decline and hyperinflation were pivotal elements in the crisis of the 3rd century in Rome, a period marked by profound instability and transformation. This period, spanning roughly from 235 to 284 AD, was characterized by political chaos, military upheaval, and severe economic disarray. The hallmark of the economic decline was the devaluation of Roman currency and rampant hyperinflation. As the empire struggled with constant power shifts and military pressures, emperors resorted to debasing the currency, reducing the silver content in coins as a quick fix to finance military campaigns. This debasement caused the value of money to plummet and prices to soar uncontrollably. The importance of economic decline and hyperinflation during this crisis lies in its devastating long-term effects on Roman society. The economic instability eroded public confidence in the empire's financial systems, aggravated social inequalities, and disrupted trade. Such financial turmoil undermined the empire's political stability, as satisfying the military's demands increasingly drained resources, leading to further economic trouble. Two illustrative examples of this decline are the notable decrease in the silver content of the denarius, a prevalent Roman coin, and the impact on trade networks. By the mid-3rd century, the silver content of the denarius had been severely diminished, losing its value and effectiveness as a reliable currency. Concurrently, the once thriving trade networks suffered due to unreliable currency, disrupting the supply of goods and affecting everyday life across the empire. Supporters of this analysis, such as historian David Potter, claim these economic challenges significantly weakened Rome, contributing to its inability to maintain control over its vast territories. Nonetheless, challenges to this viewpoint exist. Some argue that while economic issues were severe, they were but one facet of a larger set of intertwined crises, including administrative decay and external pressures, both of which played equally critical roles in the period's turmoil. Others propose that these economic problems were not as catastrophic in real-time perception. Instead, hyperinflation was managed more effectively at local levels than previously assumed. The economic decline and hyperinflation interconnect with other aspects of the crisis by exacerbating factors like the political instability and military unrest that characterized the era. As the economy faltered, the empire's ability to pay and maintain loyalty among troops waned, leading to recurrent power struggles and further fragmenting the unity of the empire. This cyclical interplay of economic distress and political volatility highlights how financial dynamics were deeply embedded in the broader tapestry of Rome's 3rd century challenges. The crisis of the 3rd century was a period of profound instability in the Roman Empire, marked by political chaos, economic decline, and external threats. Central to this upheaval was the impact of plague and population decline, which significantly undermined Rome's social and economic foundations. The term affixed to this phenomenon mostly refers to the outbreak of the Plague of Cyprian, starting in 249 AD, which devastated the Roman population over several decades. This catastrophic epidemic, believed to have been smallpox or a similarly widespread infectious disease, led to significant loss of life, contributing to slower economic productivity and reduced military strength. This demographic collapse was significant as it exacerbated existing crises within the empire. With fewer people, there was a dramatic reduction in available soldiers to defend against increasing frontier pressures and a drop in the workforce necessary to sustain the agricultural and industrial productivity vital for Rome's economy. Furthermore, the diminished population meant less tax revenue, further straining imperial finances, which were already suffering due to increased military expenses. Historically, the Plague of Cyprian provides illustrative examples of how disease can influence geopolitical dynamics. For instance, cities like Rome and Alexandria, which were densely populated, saw their infrastructure and public health systems overwhelmed as they tried to cope with mass illness. This contributed not just to physical decay, but also to a crisis in confidence regarding traditional Roman spiritual and administrative structures. Some scholars argue that these hardships inadvertently laid the groundwork for the later transformation of the empire, including shifts toward localized self-sufficiency that paved the way for the feudal system. However, others contend that the crisis was less about population decline and more about systemic issues of governance and external pressures, suggesting that disease merely accelerated underlying problems. One ongoing debate involves the role of this plague relative to earlier and later pandemics. Some historians point to how Roman resilience seemed perpetually challenged by environmental factors and internal instability, suggesting that external fiscal and military pressures might have been more influential than disease. The impact of plague and population decline during the 3rd century crisis undeniably intersected with political instability, economic fragmentation, and military vulnerability, compounding the overarching turmoil of the era. This demographic crisis significantly influenced broader historical trajectories, both within the context of Rome's imperial decline and its eventual transformation into the later structures of medieval Europe.